So meeting in the middle and synthesis are not the same. So the middle is defined by the extremes, right? That
Mm.
is all the middle is. It's just the halfway point with the between the extremes, and you definitely don't want to let the extremes define you. So you can think about it in terms of dimensions. We're not instead of going back and trying to meet in the middle on a two-dimensional line, we're trying to actually enter a new dimension, like a third dimension. Another metaphor that I find really useful is parallax vision. So the view from our right eye is slightly different than the view from our left eye. Each eye gives us a view that's true but partial, but it's by looking through both eyes together that the world goes from flat to 3D. So there's a similar, it's not that we're choosing between the halfway point between your right eye and your left eye. You actually want to look through both eyes and see a fuller picture.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Spirituality Podcast. My name is Seth Stearns. I'm the Minister of Spiritual Life and Learning here at First Community Church in Columbus, Ohio. And on this podcast, we talk about issues around spirituality, faith, and social justice. I want to lay out a little context for our conversation today. I continue to be deeply troubled by the level of polarization that we see in our culture and our inability to talk with one another and the fracturing of relationships. And I am convinced of two things: that we have got to learn to talk with one another, and we have got to learn to speak and hear one another. Someone once said recently, we cannot get divorced. We have to figure this out, and we have to learn how to live together. So this means that our conversations need to change. The conversations, the dualistic conversations around the culture wars are not only unproductive, they continue to polarize us. So we are in deep need of a different way of talking with one another, a whole different set of conversations. Now, there are a couple of people that I've found very, very helpful in this respect. One is Monica Guzman. The other one is Ken Wilber. And they present some models that really give us some different options of talking with one another, ways that conversations that we are no longer pitted against each other, but actually participate with one another in these conversations. I recently had the opportunity to become aware of Stephanie Lepp, who is my guest today. Stephanie is an award-winning producer and storyteller devoted to expanding hearts and minds. She's the former executive producer at the Center of Humane Technology, the organization at the heart of the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma. Today, she leads Synthesis Media, a nonprofit production studio helping people hold paradox, seek synthesis, and perceive reality more fully. Stephanie has a 2025 TED Talk out there online, and where she explores the power of integrating different perspectives. Stephanie, it is a joy to have to be having this conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Seth. It's
Yes,
great to be here.
good to see you. So, if you can offer some context in terms of your work with the backdrop maybe of polarization, with your work, what was the impetus for the work that you're doing right now? What is it you're trying to address, to solve, to help with?
Yeah, so right now the theme of my work is very much, and the theme of what we're up to at Synthesis Media is very much this theme of integrating different perspectives. And it comes from the notion that, we might think that, our perspective is right, but perhaps we're all actually partially right. So instead of choosing one perspective and getting a smaller view, how might we integrate our different perspectives and gain a bigger view? And this is something that I'm very much drawing inspiration from Ken Wilber in that respect. his whole integral project of integral philosophy is about weaving together different understandings of it's like if you're trying to look at a three-dimensional object, you want to look at it from all the different vantage points and use those different perspectives to see it in its multi-dimensionality. And so that's the theme of a lot of the work that I'm up to, and you can kind of see how it would help with something like polarization, where we're fighting over whose perspective is right. And we can actually say, well, you know what, perhaps all of you or most of you maybe are partially right. And our task is actually to weave those different rightnesses together into a more comprehensive understanding.
And is that work via media? Is it workshops? What's the format
Yeah.
or the venue?
So the two most recent productions, one of them is Faces of X, which is a series of short videos that integrate different perspectives on complex social issues like gender, abortion, and race, keeping it light. But the format is very simple. I use the triad of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, and it's the same person playing all three characters. So these videos are short, but that's the idea, is that you see the same person in different outfits kind of articulate in good faith the different sides of a debate on gender or abortion, race, capitalism, AI, and then in another outfit attempt to articulate some kind of integrated perspective that weaves them together. So that's it's a video series, but for example, it's used in classrooms where teachers have their students watch the series and then write a script for an issue that they are wrestling with. So it's a real challenge to have to really, in good faith, articulate the different sides of a debate and then try to weave them together into something more comprehensive. But so that's a video series, and then the current project is called the Anti-Debate, and that is so we might ask, what would a debate look like if instead of assuming that one person was right and the other was wrong, we assumed that they were each holding different parts of the same bigger picture. So it's a format for debate that guides people in this process of first crystallizing their different perspectives, right? And which is what also a classic debate is really good at, is like clarifying the difference, but then goes further to guide them in a process of trying to, synthesize their different, positions into some kind of higher order complexity.
And by the way, the video series was great. I really
Oh,
enjoyed that,
thanks.
and I thought you did a wonderful job of initially engaging in the dualistic conversation, and then the third character who says, "Well, wait a minute, let's take another look at this." So
Yeah.
it's really effective, I think, at portraying what you're talking about. So when as you're out and you've done TED Talks, you're out there in public facing with this content and this material, what kind of responses are you getting? What are you hearing from people?
Yeah, I think the responses that I'm getting, so um the synthesis is kind of like a relatively newer, seemingly kind of like approach or angle on this, because a lot of the depolarization work seems to focus on listening, which is hard and a necessary first step. And this work with integration that then kind of goes goes from there. So, okay, after we listen to each other, then what? Right? Then we still have these two different, seemingly competing or opposing views, and that's where the integration or the synthesis can be really helpful. And sometimes there is definitely it's a yes or no or an either or, and there's just only one person kind of can be right or something like that. So sometimes, granted, that is the case, but many times, especially when we're dealing with really complex issues, it's not an either or. It's not that one person is entirely right and the other is entirely wrong. So that's when these capacities for integration and synthesis can be really helpful. And I think and in my experience, the response has been it comes as a source of relief that, like, not only might our different perspectives not be entirely clashing? What if they're actually complementary? It's both a relief and a little bit of like a revelation, that I don't have to fight with this person. There's an opportunity to learn from them, and in so doing, expand my understanding. So the response has been very receptive
Hmm.
in
Okay.
my experience. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Uh, and can you talk a little bit about the difference between meeting in the middle and synthesizing?
yes. So meeting in the middle and synthesis are not the same. So the middle is defined by the extremes, right? That
Mm,
is all the middle is. It's just the halfway point between the extremes, and you definitely don't want to let the extremes define you. So you can think about it in terms of dimensions. We're not Instead of going back and trying to meet in the middle on a two-dimensional line, we're trying to actually enter a new dimension, like a third dimension. Another metaphor that I find really useful is parallax vision. So the view from our right eye is slightly different than the view from our left eye. Each eye gives us a view that's true but partial, but it's by looking through both eyes together that the world goes from flat to 3D. So there's a
mm,
similar, it's not that we're choosing between the halfway point between your right eye and your left eye. You actually want to look through both eyes and see a fuller picture.
mm.
Yeah.
So let's take one of the cultural issues and let's just give an example of what that might look like. So kind of talk that out about what the standard debate might look like and how it starts. And then
Uh,
how do you and again pick any of them. And then what does synthesis perhaps look like?
yeah. So shall we just take abortion? Should we just dive right
Let's
into
let's
the?
let's let's yeah, let's go with something light and easy.
Okay.
Good.
So the extremes, let's say would be abortion under all circumstances and abortion under no circumstances. And there actually is no halfway point in a way because they're both completely or what would the halfway be like abortion half the time, and that doesn't
Mm,
satisfy anybody. So, but if you really, if you in good faith, like really contend with these different perspectives. Like one perspective is championing women's rights and women's autonomy, and obviously there are also like situations like rape and incest and a threat to the life of the like there are situations that must be contended with. And let's say the other perspective is honoring the sanctity of life and honoring the fact that the moral calculus of abortion changes over the course of a pregnancy as a fetus becomes more viable. So, and that's also a moving target with technology. Like viability is getting earlier, and that's something that we really need to. So, if we, integrate these different perspectives, we will likely end up with a policy that probably looks like policies that already exist in Northern Europe, but that looks you know, like that abortion is legal up until a point of viability, so we're honoring the rights of the woman up until a point, and then the fetus becomes viable such that we are now honoring the rights of the fetus, except for in situations of rape, incest, or a threat to the life of the mother. So instead of it's a move which still certainly might not satisfy everybody and the people at the extremes, but it will satisfy a majority. It will likely satisfy a majority of people. And what you're doing is saying not abortion right, abortion wrong, or abortion always, abortion never. You're saying under what circumstances, and you're defining these circumstances, and that you're using these different perspectives to define the circumstances. So
And that's the pivot, isn't it? So as opposed to either or for or against, it's the pivot, and I think the language is really important. Under what circumstances?
yes,
It's a whole different question now.
whole different question. And there's three questions that I ask to guide this process, both within the context of the anti-debate and also as, in writing these scripts for Faces of X. But one is, yes, is there an either or that can be flipped to a both and? That's a simple one. The second one is the one that you're pointing to, which is is there an opportunity to shift from what's right, X or Y, to under what circumstances, if any, X or
Mm.
Y? And suddenly, and then both people can actually be right, and maybe they're just right in different circumstances. And then the third question, well, and maybe we can get into this later, is this question of, are there perverse incentives that are making this issue harder to resolve? So within the context of abortion, something like having like a lack of, parental leave, or a lack of universal pre-K, or you know whatever, like, birth control easily accessible, like there are, or even at the level of, we don't value the private sphere in this culture. We value so many women are running around, I mean, myself included, valuing ourselves for only what we do in the public sphere and not what we do in the private. How is that affecting women's desire or lack of desire to have children? So we also want to zoom out and look at the context in which this debate is happening, and look at, like, oh, well, if we were to change our cultural norms and revalue the private sphere, and that's a tall ask, but I think necessary, and or offer parental leave or certain things that would then kind of kind of help resolve the debate in some ways, or would alleviate some of the tensions in the debate. Yeah, so those are the three questions that I ask in guiding, yeah,
Go
towards
ahead, go ahead,
synthesis.
go
Yeah.
ahead and summarize the three again, because I think those are
So
really
is there an
foundational.
yeah, is there an either or that can be flipped to a both and? Which is, it's like, where are we doing the either or thing? And is that really necessary? Then there's the what's right, X or Y, to under what circumstances, X and or Y. And then there's, are there perverse incentives? Are there issues in the kind of landscape within which this debate is happening that are making the debate harder to resolve, that are like upstream of the debate, let's say.
Those are really good. Those are good tools to pivot out of the normal dualistic the debate or argument or conversation that we normally have about these types of issues.
Yeah.
I used to work with an executive coach, and he did an interesting framing. So if he was going to challenge me about certain things, he instead of framing that in a really, really serious way, like, you need to do this and this is really important that you do this, he would say, let's play. Let's play with a goal. And
Oh,
if
nice.
if
I
we're
love
just
that.
if we're just playing, what might this look like, and how might you accomplish this, and the like. It strikes me that this sort of almost invites that, where we can say to one another, hey, you know what? Let's step back from the either or. Let's play with this for a minute, and let's
Yeah.
let's let's create something together around this
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
And it takes, perhaps it brings the heat down a little bit,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so what you're talking about, is the anti-debate model,
Yes.
correct?
Well, these are three questions they're kind of my, the three questions that I've kind of developed in response to, because the question that I often get asked is how, right? How do you integrate different perspectives? It's an art and a science, and something that has been explored at length from thinkers from George Hegel to Ken Wilber. Ken Wilber used to sit in a room, no joke, like 27 legal pads for like years, like trying to integrate these different theories into these like unifying, meta theories. How do normal people actually do this thing of integrating different perspectives? So this is my very simple attempt. Those questions kind of help help me do that. And so but in terms of the anti-debate, I know you were curious, to talk through kind of like, what are the key kind of tools that are used. These three questions are part of it, but not the whole thing. So we can also talk about the three steps in the anti-debate that anyone can do in their own lives and their own conversations.
Yes, and that's where I was going to go. So
Oh,
let's talk
okay.
about those three steps, and if you could also maybe a pivot or transition to not just in a debate context, but how might we incorporate some of these tools and processes that you're talking about when we're at a family gathering or when
Yeah.
we're talking one-on-one with somebody, again, who sees this an issue, whatever the issue might be, very differently than we do.
Yeah. So these tools are definitely useful at your Thanksgiving dinner table. So, but I think it might be helpful to just take a quick step back and just explain the anti-debate format, and then I'll explain where these tools fit in the format. So the format, and yes, this is within the context of debate, but the format has three phases. Phase one is about differentiating the different perspectives. So it actually starts out like a traditional debate with opening statements and rebuttals. And so we're kind of crystallizing our different ingredients, so to speak. That's phase one. Phase two is about exploring integration. So that's where we explore how we might mix our different ingredients into something new. And that's where these three little steps come in that I'll double click on in a second. And then phase three is just very simply taking stock of what was learned, like how the participants ask themselves, how did my view expand, if at all? So that's the basic arc. Kind of debate, synthesis, what did we learn? So then what happens in the synthesis part? That's kind of the juicy part. And that's where these tools are. So the first step is that participants steel man each other. Do you know what steel manning is?
Yes, and that is when we try to present the other's argument more strongly.
Yes. Yeah. So it's the opposite of straw manning. So straw manning is representing the weakest version so that
Mm.
you can then defeat it, right? So steel manning is you're representing the strongest version of their perspective. And it's something that we often do in couples therapy, right? The therapist will say, can you re-articulate what your partner said so that they know that you understood them, but then we like don't do that in debate. But we should,
Mm.
or we do. It's debates that formats that have switch sides. Actually, this is what they do in a switch side debate: is they trade sides and they have to articulate the other side. So that is a very simple thing that can be done in a conversation. Is you can mirror to the person back to them what they said, so that they feel they can like rest in the understanding that you got them, that you see them, that you understand where they're coming from. And you can also ask for that back. If you feel it getting heated, you can say, oh, let me just see if I'm understanding you correctly. Let me try this on and you tell me how I did, and then I'd like to ask you to also reflect back to me what I'm saying so I can know that you understood it. So that's a very simple practice. And in the context of therapy, it's called mirroring. I guess in the context of, kind of dialogue, it's called steel manning.
And I could
Um,
see going back to that game analogy or playing analogy. I could see
yeah,
introducing that in the conversation and say, you know what, let's play a game.
yeah,
I'm going to try to articulate your position as strongly as I can, and you do the same. So
yeah,
you could, and again, it can change the tone of that conversation
completely. Very
dramatically.
disarming. Yes, very disarming. Whenever we get to this point in the anti-debate, the whole vibe shifts.
Mm.
Yeah, it's very disarming. And I should specify mirroring within the context of therapy is you're saying kind of exactly what the other person said. Whereas steel manning, to your point, you are in a way trying to like even strengthen it further.
Mm.
And it's an amazing thing to watch people do. There is there's a clip that kind of went viral of Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson steel manning each other, and they did such a beautiful job that there's part of you that's like, didn't they just convince themselves of the other
Mm.
person's argument just based on how well they articulated it? And that's part of the idea. It's like you really try it on and then you see it, you get it, you feel it. Yeah, you inhabit it. So anyway, that's step one. So that's step one in the synthesis phase of the anti-debate, but you can do this anywhere, steel manning. Step two is red teaming. So red teaming, I think it's originally a military term, but the idea is like to try to hack yourself. So you can do that with a variety of questions. What are the unintended consequences of my position? In what circumstances does my position not apply? Like, which of my opponent's points do I have no adequate rebuttal to? Like, which of my points are not falsifiable? You can try to poke holes. The way the anti-debate does it is just with the very simple question, what would it take to change my view? And to be as specific as possible. Like if I learned that some percentage of the abortion, whatever it is, that would actually change my view. Um,
Now,
so
when you
um,
say change my view, does that mean I would actually line up with the other, or that I would begin to expand my position a little bit?
I would think of it as because the goal of the anti-debate is not to change minds. To your point, I'm not trying to convert you to me or me to you. We're trying to give all of us a more comprehensive view, and that more comprehensive view at the end of the anti-debate might still be different, but it might be more overlapping. The Venn
Mm,
diagram.
hmm
But we're trying to expand. So change my view would mean, yeah, expand in some way. Probably not like convert my position over to your position, although certainly that could happen sometimes. But so that is also something that, yeah, you could do within the context of a conversation with someone is just like, okay, let's play with this. Like let's each ask ourselves the question, what would it take to change my view?
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah,
Does
so
that does,
steel manning, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No,
No,
you go ahead.
well, I've got a question, but I want to be sure you finish your
That's
kind of key pieces of the
oh
anti-debate.
the well so okay so then the yeah so I'll finish that so to close it out, yeah, so steel manning is about seeing the strength in the other person's position, right? And then red teaming is about kind of exploring the potential weakness of your own, and that puts you in an excellent place to then do the open-ended synthesis seeking guided by the three questions that we talked about earlier. Now
Okay.
you've like you get the other person's, you're kind of seeing where yours might fall short, and then you're in a good position to try to explore integration with the either or to both and yes or no to under what circumstances, and then are there perverse incentives?
So how would you
Yeah.
set this up? How would it, and I'm going to make the assumption that you've done this on sort of an individual basis, conversation with friend, family member. How, um, yeah, how do you manage that? I mean, do you just do it sort of conversationally? Yeah,
Well,
how do you do
I've
this
been
one on
doing it.
one?
I mean, I've been doing it within the context of anti-debate. So there's a moderator, and it's formal, and they're the people are adhering to the format. So in that sense, it's I don't, yeah, it's within the context of we are here to go through this format and that's what we're doing. Within the context of a conversation, if I was just in a conversation with people, then I think what we've been talking about like, let's play with this and just like bring out one of I would start with the steel manning. I would still use this order, and the steel manning could already just take you pretty far, I think. Yeah,
For,
just
probably a lot
for
further
both
than
people, both for the
it
person
would have gone.
listening. Yeah, both for the person listening and being like, they understand me. Okay, my nervous system can relax. And then for the other person of like actually having to get in there instead of just resist, reject, to really get in there and articulate it in good faith. So that can take you pretty far.
But it would take
Yeah.
one of the two to say to kind of
Let's
introduce
do this.
these elements, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I
And
would say introduce it not in a heated moment, like just introduce the idea. I don't know if we're talking about with your spouse or, introduce the ideas like, oh, here's something I'd like to try at some point. And then when you need it, then you can bring it out. And then you both know about it. But
mhm.
yeah, but I think these are, I guess it also maybe depends how much like structure you bring into your kind of conversations with this person or with people in general. Like my husband and I are we're interested in these kinds of things. Not that we do them all the time, but I think it's helpful sometimes to have like a template for how we do repair, you know, or how we do or how we kind of find our way when we're kind of butting heads about something.
Mhm.
So, but yeah,
Does
yeah,
um does the well, actually, let me go back to the question I was going to ask you. And this would probably definitely fit in the debate format, but also perhaps on one-on-one. But what are the conditions that need to be present to be able to have these conversations? Well, I'll leave it there. So from your perspective, what are the conditions that would have to be present to be able
yeah,
to kind of veer off course and go a different direction with
yeah. I mean, I think the first thing, which is what a lot of, not so much my focus, but thank God there are many people focus. I mean, the first thing is probably like your nervous system needs to feel safe enough to go here. Like, and a lot of this territory is pretty cognitive. Um, I think, I mean, if I were to kind of, um, kind of think more broadly about what good sense making requires, so we have three kinds of epistemics here. We have first person epistemics of like know thyself. It's like knowing my biases and my cognitive biases and my, you could even like parts work, knowing my different parts and what they want and how they often get involved and, are, that's here, that's in the mix. So we could say that know thyself, like one thing that's required is knowing yourself and knowing how to tend to yourself and your nervous system. Another thing that's required is being able to know second person, so knowing the other, so being able to inhabit another person's perspective. That's what Steel Manning helps us do. And then the third person epistemic, which is what we usually focus on, is knowing the world, which is like, what are your sources, and yeah, where are you getting your information from, and how trustworthy is it, and et cetera, et cetera. And often critical thinking is focused like largely on third person, like knowing the world. But I think like you really have to also know yourself, and you also have to know how to inhabit other people. So it's that sounds like a lot, but I think that is actually what is required. If we
Mm.
want to be in a practice of good sense making about reality, which is infinitely complex, you know. But yeah, knowing the glasses that we're looking through, taking them off periodically, cleaning them, putting them back on, showing them to other people, looking at being able to look at other people's glasses and then like look through the glasses into the world. Yeah.
So, in the spirit of truth being tribal, you mentioned information. How does that get managed in the debate format? Because we all have our sources of information that's
Yeah.
normally biased, one way or
Yeah.
the other. So, are there ground rules, expectations around if you're going to present information? Yeah. So, how does
Yeah.
information get managed?
Yeah, so that's one of those things. So with the anti-debate, I mean, it's like an open source format, and the basic arc is debate synthesis. What did we learn? And I have a how-to guide, and I spell it all out. But ultimately, people will use it. I invite people to use it in the way that is most useful to them. So in some contexts, some people will want to go much more kind of internal into like, how are you feeling as you're hearing the other person, make their case or steel man you, or, and then this is a whole other realm that some moderators or some platforms will want to have a live fact checker, because that is a whole area that could be
Mm,
its own. The ones that I have done, we haven't had fact checking be part of it, and we've just engaged kind of public intellectuals who like kind of who know each other and maybe have enough of a sufficient level of trust. But that is something where in some context, yeah, that's a big question, is
mm.
like, do you challenge people to cite their sources? Do you have a live fact checker, or at least fact check it before anything airs? I don't have like a one. The anti-debate doesn't have like one answer to that. It's kind of like it depends on the context, but it is definitely a big, um, yeah, question and an important question.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But I could also see that with the agenda of the anti-debate, and whether it's in the debate format or in a one-on-one conversation. I mean, when do we rely? When do we want to pull on sources? Is when we're really trying to convince the other person that we are right.
Yes. Yeah.
And the format that you're suggesting actually pivots out of that fairly quickly. There's the initial stage of kind of stating your position and so forth. So you have the option or the opportunity, I suppose, to cite some facts and the like. But you're not there very long, right? You're gonna
Hmm.
then you sort of pivot to the steel manning, and it's more positional than it is. I'm gonna bury you in facts.
It's true, but you still need facts to do good synthesis, obviously. So it is a like if you were going to make a policy, you know, your abortion policy of under what you need to have some facts about viability. And you know, so there is still even if the focus is synthesis, like working on a shared basis of, you know, of facts is really important. Um, yeah, we haven't done an anti-debate yet where there was a live fact checker, but I can definitely imagine, you
Mm,
know, in some situations that we will want that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So how is this similar or dissimilar from the Braver Angels model? And just let me
Yeah.
for some folks who might be listening who don't know about the Braver Angels model. Braver Angels is an organization where they attempt to bring reds and blues together and have conversation and debate on in a very civil. It's an opportunity to hear one another, and again, not to some similarity to what we're talking about, not to convince one another, but to hear one another, grow in our understanding. So, with
Mm,
that context, are there similarities, differences between what you're suggesting and the Braver Angels
both.
model?
Yeah, there are similarities and differences. And if it's helpful for people as part of on the anti-debate website, which is anti-debate.org, there is a quote unquote a discourse matrix, which is a matrix that lists various different dialogue and debate practices, including Socratic dialogue, Oxford debate, Braver Angels, community conversations, the anti-debate, and just and lays out attempts to, you know, it's you know somewhat concise, but attempts to kind of lay out how these different dialogue and debate practices work and what their goals are and the circumstances under which they work best. So you can kind of like we're not. I don't think anyone is saying like use this one under every and all circumstances. Like look at this rich legacy of dialogue and debate practices we have, like under what circumstances? Of course, back to that question is which one useful? So, Braver Angels community debates, um, the purpose is to help small groups with different perspectives build empathy and connection. So the goal is really is kind of understanding of different perspectives and there's not really like a an attempt to like persuade or defeat or come to a resolution or synthesis. It's really kind of about like understanding the different perspectives, whereas the anti-debate is really driving towards attempting to drive towards some kind of higher order synthesis. It's like, okay, we want to see each other and understand each other, but then we want to see what we can make together.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Very good. As you're talking about the different formats of debate, for many in our culture right now, there's very little interest in talking to someone from who has a different perspective, particularly on one of the cultural hot issues.
Mm.
And there's also the part of that discomfort is the lack of skills.
Mm-hmm.
how do we have a conversation about these before they go from 0 to 60 in 3 nanoseconds? That
Right.
become before this issue gets really, really charged. So I say that appreciating that at this website that you shared, that this notion of debate and discourse is
Oh,
ages
ancient.
old,
Yeah.
and we've sort of lost our ability to do that. I mean, even what we
Yeah.
call, in our governmental debates, those aren't really debates.
Yeah.
So
Mm-mm.
we don't even see good examples of this
Yeah.
anymore. And so I find it really refreshing in the course of this conversation to really look at discourse and debate in a much healthier, productive kind of way,
Mm-hmm.
because we just don't have very good models for that right now.
Yeah. Yeah, right now. But yes, you're right. Is ancient, goes back thousands of years if we're, yeah, looking at, I mean, and we could talk about, Jewish practices. We have Tibetan disputation practices, Socratic dialogue. So we've been doing this for thousands of years. We're right now swimming upstream, right? You mentioned in the intro that I was the executive producer at the Center for Humane Technology. So for anyone who watched The Social Dilemma, we are living inside of a division industrial complex, right? The algorithms are really, you know, driving, outrage and reactivity and polarization. So we're trying to have these debates within, at least when it comes to online, within a context in which we're really swimming upstream.
Mm,
So it's not just, I wouldn't just blame, let's say, like us as individuals, like, yeah, the arena in which we're trying to do this is really stacked against us. And so part of the issue, sure, is learning the skills, of course, and learning how to do this, you know, the steel manning and red teaming and exploring of integration. But part of it is also dealing with the perverse incentives,
mm.
yeah, of the context in which we're even trying to have dialogue and debate.
I think that's a really, really important point, is that to have conversations like we are describing, like you are describing, have debates like you are describing, is an act of resistance
Mm,
in our current culture,
mm,
both from a technology, just cultural, political, every major institution within our country right now, and could be
yeah,
argued the world, but certainly within our country, is um, how do I want to say, promotes just the opposite of what you and I are talking about today.
yeah.
And
Promotes
so,
binaries.
we have to be and I appreciate your call out that it's not just skills, but we have to also be very, very intentional about having these types of conversations,
Hmm.
because they're not going to be naturally facilitated by our institutions.
Right.
Think that's
Are
fair to say?
you a source of maybe hope? Are you familiar with the perception gap, the phenomenon of the perception gap? This is the phenomenon whereby people kind of consistently overestimate how extreme the other side is and underestimate how much common ground actually exists. So I mean, to some extent, we are actually fighting with mirages
Mm-hmm.
of each other. We don't actually know how much we agree. And it's when we get ourselves into these situations like, you know, Braver Angels community debates or anti-debates or General Assembly style kind of deliberative democracy, that we see how much common ground there actually is.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and this notion of this notion of we tend to want to hang out with people who see the world like we do,
There's that.
and then the people who don't see the world like we do also do the same. So
Yeah.
they are getting together, and then all the algorithms continue to support that, and so
Yeah.
we lose those. we've lost those opportunities to interact with people who see the world differently on just a regular basis, just
Right.
at the, on just a regular basis. And so, um, yeah, the chips really are kind of stacked against us here as we think about this in terms of
Yeah.
having dialogue with people who see the world differently than we do.
But I still feel optimistic.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because you're out there really doing this work.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and I will say, like, when you have complexity on your side, how can it not be more entertaining?
mm, right, yeah,
I think the other stuff just gets boring. When it's
mm,
predictable, it's more boring. When it's
yeah,
less predictable, it's less boring. So, yeah,
yeah,
let's try to make something new.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and your other point was well made that I think some of the research was 87 or 89% of Americans want to have the kind of conversations that we're talking about. But
Uh-huh.
we only hear the
Yeah.
extreme positions. But
Yeah.
the vast majority of Americans want to have these conversations. Um, so I think that's worth remembering. And
Yeah.
the other Monica Guzman quote that I love is those who are underrepresented in our lives are overrepresented in our minds.
Hmm.
And I think there's real power to that. We tend to make a ton of assumptions about what someone is all about who happens to see the world differently than we do.
Yeah. Hmm.
So you referenced your faith as sort of a backdrop to this. So let's
Yeah.
this is a spirituality podcast, so we probably should talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
So talk to us about Judaism and what does Judaism have to say about these things?
Yeah. Judaism has a lot to say.
Hmm.
Yeah, the Jewish tradition, I mean, honestly, I feel like the the Jewish tradition has almost used kind of productive disagreement as an emergent and then kind of more explicit strategy to keep itself alive and to keep itself resilient in the face of diaspora and persecution. I think that like integrating different perspectives and productive disagreement is literally part of why Judaism continues to exist. But in terms of where it shows up, so the way that I've thought about it is it shows up in our history, in our practices, and in our philosophy and mysticism. Where would you like to double click? History, philosophy, because it's really all over the tradition.
Hmm.
Is
Hmm.
there, would you
Well,
like to just like one example from each or?
sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and you're probably going to touch on this, but I mean, the Jewish tradition is really known for this um, uh, debating everything.
Yeah,
I mean, when it comes to Torah and
yes,
all the arguments about, what does the law really mean and what does it include? I mean, that has been argued for centuries. And but it's just part. It's also part of the faith tradition, in the faith
yeah,
culture.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, just kind of riff on some of that.
Yeah, so maybe we'll start with the rabbinic period's famous debate schools. So this is Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. Beit means house. So
Mm,
these famous debate houses, let's say, would debate vigorously, and then they would break bread together, right?
mm,
Because it's like vigorous competitive debate was ultimately a collaboration to wrestle with Jewish law. And they had a practice of they would always read that. So the debate was when a debate was won, usually by Hillel, the minority opinion, the losing opinion, was read first. Which I just find like I imagine our Supreme Court doing that. It's like
mm,
it's just I think of like a sweet way of elevating. Like, yes, this is the minority opinion, but it still has some partial truth that is worth
hmm,
honoring. Um, the Talmud itself, right? The Talmud, which is the central text of rabbinic Judaism, is entirely based on rabbinic disagreements. Like if you've ever looked at a page of Talmud, it's very hard to read because you have like the original text and then you have like this interpretation and that interpretation and this disagreement and this other rabbinic and it's literally just a compendium of rabbinic disagreements over the course of 2 centuries, which
Mhm.
is, yeah, part of what makes it like a resilient and living document. Um, I mentioned this before we hopped on, but in Judaism, so there's a practice called chavruta, which is in Judaism, we are commanded to study the Talmud in pairs because it is by virtue of having different perspectives that we sharpen each other's intellect. So we are actually not supposed to study alone. Chavruta, the practice is called chavruta, which is related to the word chaver, which means friend. So it's like you got to study with your study buddy because that's part of how the our understanding evolves is in these dialectics. Maybe um, I'll share I don't know. My favorite example actually of where this shows up is in our the Jewish Kabbalistic creation myth, the story of Ein Sof, which is the story of um, so in order for God to create existence, um, once upon a time there was nothing that was not God. All was God. So in order for God to create anything that was other than God, God had to withdraw God's self and create this space. And there's a whole story about filling these vessels with light, and the light shattered, and the vessel shattered. The light overflowed, and the vessel shattered. And the idea is that the pieces of the vessels that have been shattered is actually our world and us, like broken into jagged pieces, like a jigsaw puzzle thrown to the floor. And that our job in our lifetimes is to put the pieces back together. And that is what we call tikkun olam, to repair the world. But this notion that our job is to take these pieces, and the way, of course, I interpret it is to take these partial truths, right, and weave them together, put them back together, and in so doing, that is part of the work of repairing the world.
I love that. I love that. And what a beautiful imagery of the work that you're doing. Uh, Outstanding. I was thinking too, I recently had a conversation with Reverend Dr. David Gushee, and he lives here in the States, but then half the year he lives in England, and he
But
very
I'm
active.
pretty sure I interviewed him for Faces of Abortion.
Oh yeah, he's
Did
a
he just,
Christian
yeah,
ethicist.
yes, I
Yeah.
interviewed him for that script.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Cool.
Uh,
Anyways, go on. Yeah.
so he was sharing that uh, so he's very active in the Anglican Church in England, and the part that where he is in England when he's over there is very rural, and so there aren't too many Anglican churches. And so he was talking about that, and I was asking him, so what's the theology of the churches there? You know, are they conservative? Are they more progressive? And he said because they are so sparse, they have to cover, each church has to cover all of that, all that theology. And folks understand that they don't have the option to go somewhere else because there aren't other Anglican churches around. And his point was that we here in the States could learn something from that, because here in the States, as soon as we have a disagreement, we're going to leave the church, or we're going to go start another church over here that we all believe in the same
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
And so I thought his point was, I thought really interesting that there's real power and grace to be experienced when we can see the world differently, but still practice our faith with one another.
Totally.
And I think to your point in Judaism, uh, boy, you've been doing that for a long time, and
It can get,
it's a rich tradition.
it's a rich tradition. I wish I could say that it has helped the Jewish people kind of I mean, disagreements obviously
Mm,
run extraordinarily deep.
mm,
So, but um, I think within congregations, let's say, with people of different perspectives and within families, like there is an ability to be with, for sure, disagreement, because that's part of what we're about culturally,
Mm,
right? Two Jews,
yeah.
three opinions. So we kind of we're used to this, and we don't shy away from the wrestling.
Mm.
Yeah.
Which, as you pointed out earlier, which is what Israel means, is
Yes,
wrestling with God.
to wrestle with God. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, Stephanie, what's your vision? You seem to be optimistic or hopeful or both. What's your what's your vision of your work? What's your vision of where culturally we all may be going?
Well, I would say that, I mean, I guess I would just say that I believe, and I think there's ample evidence to support that human consciousness is evolving.
Mm,
And that's what gives me my hope. Human consciousness has evolved over time, certainly in fits and starts and at different rates and different lines of development of, moral development versus, you know, cognitive development. So, but say, yeah, I mean, the fact that just the notion of human rights, that was an idea that was birthed and then enacted, so yes, in fits and starts, but I take hope and optimism from the fact that human consciousness is evolving, and my I'm just attempting to do my little part in supporting that emergent process.
hmm
Yeah, and so I mean, with these last couple projects, um, the way that I have been, my humble way to support has been by focusing on this this theme of integrating different perspectives into a bigger picture of reality. But the next, we're kind of moving on to our next theme. I can feel that changing, but
Mm,
always in this with this yeah, with this endeavor to support the evolution of consciousness.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I'm saying this right. Ken Wilber looks at evolution and calls it spirit in action. I think that's his terminology. That
Uh,
there is this evolutionary energy that try as we might, we're not going to be able to stop it. Um, it will it will do what it's going to do. And I'm really grateful for the work that you're doing. And it's a really important voice. I'm coming away with I think some really kind of interesting and fun ideas about how how we might develop the skills to have these conversations in fun, creative um, ways that we can turn the heat down
yeah.
and look at one another, look at the world, look at these issues in a way that perhaps we haven't looked at them before. So
Oh, good.
I want to, yeah, thank you for what you're doing. And so, if people want to know more about your work, direct us. Where do we go to see
Yes.
more of what you're doing?
Yes. Thank you. And thank you, Seth. Such great questions. I don't think I've ever been interviewed by a reverend before. So this is a special treat. Thank you. And what a lucky congregation you have that you're doing these interviews and bringing your lessons back to them. People can find the anti-debate at anti-debate.org. They can find all Synthesis Media work at synthesismedia.org. And for those people who are on X, which there may not be many, but I'm pretty active on X at Steph Lepp.
Steph Lepp.
Steph Lepp. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I also did want to point out that the Faces of X out there on YouTube.
Yeah.
And
It,
really
yeah.
encourage folks to go out there YouTube and look up Faces of X, and you'll see is it nine videos
Oh,
or
I should know. I think there's six.
six? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Just wonderful work. Stephanie, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for taking time, and I look forward to talking with you again and hearing more about your future projects. And
Yes.
as I continue to mull this stuff over, I may send you a note with some thoughts and questions, and
Please do.
I look forward to staying in contact with you.
Me too. Me too.